Welcome back to Extra Shot with me, Charlotte Can. We are live from Windsor and it's day 2 of the DSP Leaders World Forum. Many rich discussions have happened here this morning and we're going to talk about session number 6, which was all about how to leverage telco cloud for advanced operations and of course the benefits of adopting a hybrid model, which was actually, before I introduce you to my lovely guests here, well, we conducted a survey, didn't we, to find out what the best way to go about the cloud is. So let me introduce you to my lovely guests. We've got Martyn Warwick, who's co-founder and editor-in-chief at TelecomTV, Alex Foster, DSP Leaders Councillor. Thank you for joining us. Always a pleasure to see you here. And Francis, we had you on Extra Shot yesterday, but it's also always a pleasure to welcome you back. Okay, Francis Haysom, Principal Analyst at Appledore Research. Welcome to all of you. So yes, Martyn, we conducted this survey, a bit of a rhetorical question around which cloud is best for telco operators. The overwhelming result was hybrid.
It was, and not really surprising, although it surprised Ray that it was more than he expected, but the practical reason for it is the best current solution that you could possibly have to the problem.
Alex, your thoughts?
I really liked one of the comments that came from one of the panelists, and they said, you don't buy cloud, you do cloud. And I think that really brought it to life, that actually in the doing, it's an action and therefore it is a choice, which is why I think it has come out as hybrid. So the right solution for the right user case and therefore the action in the do.
Francis?
My observation, I think, with the cloud is the cloud means a lot of things to a lot of people, and these terms of hybrid cloud or public cloud or private cloud are kind of abstractions, really. The honest thing is there are really only 3 things in this model. There's hardware, putting hardware somewhere. There's putting software on top of it. There's connecting that all up. But most importantly, there's commercial models that are on top of it. When we are making the story about our choices of hybrid cloud and public cloud or private cloud, actually most of the time we're not really talking about what the underlying technology is. We're talking about commercial models and how that is played on top of that one. And I think that's why you're seeing the reaction in terms of hybrid cloud. Public cloud is great for some things. It's Jeff in the session said, it's great for that kind of scalability, that ability to start small and scale up. It's probably not a great opportunity for many of the telco loads, which we know already plan and deploy with sort of 5-year timescales. If you know what the capacity is going to be in 5 years' time, there's very little agility and scale in that one. So I think the important thing is actually to recognize these 3 fundamentals, and most of it is about the commercial model that supports it and what's best for the application that telco wants to deliver.
What's key here, by the sound of it, is having that flexibility. It's very important. Nevertheless, some operators may not have the resources to build and run a private cloud and have this option of maybe switching to a hybrid cloud model if they would like to. So I'm wondering, is the public cloud sufficient to meet their needs? Do they have to go for private and hybrid and have that range of options?
I would say that the answer is private clouds have a very specific purpose, and there are reasons for that. Security, generally, others as well, but they're very specialized to a particular purpose or set of purposes. Public cloud is not quite like that, and so there is room for both, and there has to be room for both, certainly for now, and I can't see that being any different in the next decade.
Okay, so flexibility, security, what else?
Yes, I mean, it depends on who the customers are that you are supporting. in certain circumstances, as we heard from the panel, actually there are certain industries where actually you've got to have that data containerization from a regulatory point of view, and so therefore it has to be private in that instance. However, we know working with some of the public clouds, they're absolutely working on regulatory compliant clouds that would then drive that efficiency, that would drive that scalability, would drive the flexibility that would also be needed.
Thank you. Francis.
I'll come back to I think it's the commercial model. There's a lot of examples where the public cloud providers, the hyperscalers, are actually delivering in-country, secured, allocated, separated capability. Some are finding that is to all intents and purposes, that is a private cloud, but it's run and delivered by a public, what we would term a public cloud provider. So I think again, I would emphasize it's really down to the commercial model, both of the cloud you want to deliver, the infrastructure you want to deliver, and how you're intending to monetize it. Regulation is a means of determining that monetization. If you're a small provider, though, maybe the larger providers providing you a private cloud is actually the better way, because they take the operational, the scaling problem away from you, but at the same time give you that kind of security and geolocation.
So we're going to take a long break for lunch. There's a lot of hospitality and entertainment going on here at the Fairmont in Windsor. But before we go and before we resume our conversation around hybrid cloud and which solution is best for telcos, I just wanted you all to maybe take turns to share the content, the takeaways, the sessions, what you've heard here so far that has really resonated with you on day 2 of the forum.
Well, I was going to say the AI session, but seeing as we've moved on from that, I would say probably the last session that we just did that we're talking about now was the most relevant to what I've been writing about and discussing a lot in TelecomTV, and therefore I think that's the thing that was the hardest hitting, and it's very, very, more than interesting, it's fascinating to hear the different approaches by people who are really doing it.
I love the AI and API sessions that we've had. We've had some very, very big numbers thrown out. Was it this morning, GSMA saying it's between 100 and 300 billion in terms of the opportunity. And we heard on the last panel that the telco cloud opportunity was a 23 billion opportunity for vendors. So hopefully all of the sessions have given something for all of the ecosystem here today. But one thing and one sentence really stood out today was when one of the panelists said, slow is the new down. You know, and when we start to think about APIs, when we start to think about applications and latency, and that sentence about actually slow actually is down, and the data that we then discussed on the panel about, well, actually, what did that mean in terms of loss of customers, actually then starts to move towards that inference at the edge, looking at edge and edge compute and being able to do real-time decision-making at the edge. So I think that as we talk about APIs, as we talk about cloudification, actually that next leap is absolutely into inference, cloud decision-making at the edge.
Slow is the new down. Good one, isn't it? Killer quote of the forum, definitely. Francis.
Actually, it was another quote that resonated with me. It was from Jeff Hollingworth, the Rakuten Symphony. He said, we need to be asking, why are we doing this? If we're not very clear why we're doing this, all of the problems that we've been generally discussing throughout the 2 days are a consequence of we don't quite know why we're doing this one. And he made the emphasis, you know, at the end of the day, Rakuten Symphony, or Rakuten Mobile particularly, did this because it was a commercial imperative to do cloud. It's not that they're choosing cloud because it's the next tick box on the CV or something like that. They're choosing it because it's necessary for the business model that they want to be as a fourth operator in Rakuten. So I'll come back to that. I think that's the big thing that resonated with me. Ask yourself the question, why? And if it doesn't have a commercial imperative to it, question yourself further.
Why? Always a good one to ask yourselves, whatever you undertake. Thank you very much to our wonderful guests. I hope to see some of you after the lunch break, hopefully, to discuss cloud and APIs, AI, all the challenges and opportunities of the telco industry right now. So stay with us. We're back in 1 hour for Extra Shot. And in the meantime, well, happy lunch, I guess. Welcome back to Extra Shot with me, Charlotte Can. I'm delighted to have you joining us on day 2 of the DSP Leaders World Forum here in Windsor, where I'm joined by Francis, who was with us before the lunch break. Thank you for sticking with us, Francis. For more analysis, of course, on some of the sessions we've had here at the forum, and a special guest, Cormac, Whelan, head of the Telecom Systems business for Europe, Middle East and Africa at Dell Technologies. Thank you for being with us.
Charlotte, pleasure.
So, Cormac, you were here last year. I remember it because we had various chats around the telco sector and the various challenges it's facing. So I'd like you to maybe tell us how you think conversations have evolved since last year.
I think it's been a very interesting year on a couple of different fronts. I think from a macroeconomic point of view, unfortunately, we still feel that the market is kind of a little depressed, which for our industry requires innovation, requires investment, and so sometimes it's difficult against a macroeconomic depressed background. So that's a challenge everybody in the industry is facing. We've seen a massive, obviously, sudden interest over the last year in particular in AI. I think everyone has been talking this week about AI, and we can get into it a little bit later in sort of some detail, but that's one massive change from last year. Interestingly, I'm not seeing as much this year in the conversation around things like sustainability and the ESG agenda, not because it's gone away, just because I think we're in danger maybe of some of the AI hype overtaking the conversation and the sound bites. So I think that's a thing we need to keep an eye on. But fundamentally, it's still a very positive industry on the forward-looking nature that communications and critical infrastructure requires and brings to the world. We've all seen from the COVID years now as we've come out of this that the need for constant ongoing improvement in communication and availability is more important than ever and will continue to be even more so as we go forward. So I think directionally still going in the same way, bit of an economic challenge, but some new exciting things happening in the area sort of AI.
Francis, and I should remind the audience that you're principal analyst at Appledore Research. Francis, going back to the point that Cormac was making on those shifting conversations that the telco sector is having, it is true that there's possibly less emphasis on sustainability and skills. We talked about skills and upskilling the workforce as well last year. That's because there's been the switch to AI, I guess. You know, it's hard to escape conversations across any industry from AI since obviously Gen AI appeared, and that's really been a massive step change for the industry. And I know you enjoyed that session, didn't you, Francis? The AI session. Could you share some of the key takeaways for us?
Yeah, for me, the AI session, I concur with the point, which is I think we're getting a little bit more realistic about a lot of the things that we've been discussing over the last few years. And I think some of that is actually driven by the AI, this kind of AI bombshell that we've had over the last year.
Explosion, absolutely.
Explosion would be a better word. And I think what it is doing is it's making telco actually focus on two things. One of which is being, rather than taking Gen AI as a kind of general thing, is what do I want it to do? I think I mentioned in the earlier session, Jeff made a really key point on just about everything we discuss here, which is ask yourself the question, why are you doing that one? So I think there's the opportunity for AI to drive why conversations within the existing business of that one. I think the other thing that was coming out in the session, which is this opportunity of how do we support that AI explosion within our networks. It requires networks. Andrew Coward in the last session made one very key thing. A lot of these AI use cases are going to require edge capability. Otherwise, just the time latency work. So and I think that's the key thing to focus on is not that we are trying to be AI companies or LLM providers, but rather that what is AI going to require of the network and the capacity of the network to deliver that one. Great conversations, I think, beginning here. You know, it's a very early stage in terms of what we're doing, but I think there's both the opportunity. How do we apply AI into our business? How do we leverage what AI requires of the network to grow our business?
Cormac, the industry is currently facing many challenges, what with the need to automate, need to integrate AI, of course. Like I've said, the need to upskill its workforce. We've got opportunities as well, of course. We talked about APIs, cloudification, etc. So I was wondering if you could tell us a bit more about the role DEC Technologies is playing currently to help the sector transform and grab those opportunities or face those challenges.
Yeah, of course. So we've actually created about 4 years ago a dedicated telecom business unit within Dell Technologies, specifically to address what we saw happening in the areas of edge computing, edge networking, AI, and Open RAN. Because fundamentally, all of those are going to run or require increased compute power.
Yeah.
They're going to require much more open platforms than maybe some of the traditional network, particularly radio stacks we've seen in the past. And this is all understood and well known. The question is, how does that transition get made to a more open x86 generic compute platform going forward? Not that I think anything in the telco world is ever generic, because by the very nature of the business, it is rather specific, and then by very nature of each telco, they're rather unique in some way, shape, or form. So what Dell has done is created a telecom business unit to address that transition for telcos from the traditional proprietary stacks into an open x86 compute environment, which is going to come in at the hardware level and then work its way up through a CAS layer level and up into an application kind of level going forward. As I think more and more of the traditional vendors move maybe out of unique hardware into software-defined networks, into software applications, and RAM becoming a software capability on a network, that requires the growth of more standard technology. And we are one of the largest standard x86-based technology companies, so it seemed like a natural intersection point for us to play in that space. And thankfully, it's all sort of moving in that same intersection trajectory at the moment, so that's why we're here.
Okay, well, thank you so much for your thoughts today. We need to wrap up because the next session is about to commence. It's around improving network optimization through automation, so it's very topical indeed. Many thanks to both of you for your insights and for your feedback. And stay tuned for more extra shots where we'll discuss, dissect the conversations happening on the main stage here. So stay with us. We're back in 1 hour. Once again, Cormac, Francis, thank you.
Thank you.